These are the last living witnesses to World War II, and they're disappearing at a rate of more than 100 per day. Fewer than 100,000 American veterans remain alive as of late 2025 from the 16.4 million who served, which means less than half of 1% of the original force still draws breath. Between 300,000 and 500,000 World War II veterans still live across the globe, but that number shrinks by hundreds every single day. What you're about to hear is the story of a generation in its final decade and the race against time to preserve their testimony before silence falls. The numbers tell a story that's both simple and staggering, so let me give them to you straight. The National World War II Museum, using Department of Veterans Affairs statistics updated in September 2025, reports 45,418 living veterans in the United States. An earlier VA projection from 2024 put the figure at approximately 66,000 survivors. That 20,000-person gap in just 1 year shows you exactly how fast this is happening, and the contradiction isn't really a contradiction at all, just the difference in when the projections were made. 5.7 million American World War II veterans were still alive in 2000. By 2010, that number had dropped to 2.3 million, and by 2018, only 496,000 remained. Today, in late 2025, we're down to roughly 45,000, which represents a 99.7% reduction from peak to present. And the remaining fraction continues to halve approximately every 18 to 24 months. Daily death rates reveal an acceleration that should unsettle anyone paying attention. Back in 2000, when nearly 6 million veterans were still alive, approximately 1,000 were dying every day. The number held steady at about 245 per day through 2015 and 2020, even as the population shrank from 930,000 down to 300,000. But 2024 brought a grim shift when the daily toll rose to about 150 deaths from a population of just 66,000, and in 2025, with only 45,000 left, approximately 120 die each day. Think about what that means for a moment. Between 2 and 5 World War II veterans will have passed away in the time it takes you to watch this video. More than 100 will be gone by tomorrow at this time, and if the projections hold, fewer than 35,000 will remain by this time next year. American numbers dominate the conversation because the VA maintains the most detailed tracking, but the global picture follows a similar pattern of accelerating loss. Royal British Legion research puts the UK figure at fewer than 8,000 British veterans surviving. Russia reported only 7,000 veterans remaining as of December 2024, though that number comes with complications we'll get to shortly. Germany has approximately 70,000 survivors. Japan reported about 54,000 in 2022. Australia has between 2,500 and 3,000. And the Philippines had exactly 966 as of April 2024. Add it all up, across all nations, and somewhere between 300,000 and 500,000 World War II veterans remain alive on Earth today. 70 to 85 million people served in uniform during that war, which represented roughly 3% of the entire 1,940 world population, either dead or in service. We are watching the final chapter of the largest generation in military history. Age reveals everything you need to know about these last survivors, and the numbers here carry their own weight. 99 years old was the median age of surviving U.S. veterans as of 2024. The absolute youngest possible veterans, those who enlisted at 17 or 18 in 1945, were born in 1927 or 1928 and are now 97 to 98 years old. Most survivors came into the world between 1,920 and 1,925, making them 99 to 105 years old today. Every single World War II veteran alive today has lived through nearly the entire span of modern history, which means something when you stop to consider it. Silent films and Model T Fords defined the era of their birth. They fought a war before television became common in homes, and they've witnessed the entire arc of the nuclear age, the space age, the computer age, and the internet age. World population has tripled during their lifetimes. They've outlived the Soviet Union and the Cold War, and most of the countries and borders they fought to defend or defeat no longer exist in the same form. Some of them have achieved longevity that pushes the absolute boundaries of the human lifespan. Ilie Ciocan of Romania, born the 28th of May 1913, is the world's oldest verified living World War II veteran at 111 years old. Eugene Baltas turned 110 in October 2024, making him currently the oldest living American World War II veteran and the oldest American man after serving in the U.S. Navy in the Pacific Theater. Donald Rose celebrated his 110th birthday on Christmas Eve 2024 and attended the VE Day 80th anniversary commemorations in May 2025, which means traveling to a ceremony honoring something you lived through 8 decades earlier at age 110. Gustav Gerneth of Germany died at 114 after serving in the Luftwaffe, making him the oldest World War II veteran ever recorded. John Tinniswood of Britain died just recently, on the 25th of November 2024. At age 112 years and 91 days after Guinness World Records verified him as the world's oldest man and oldest living male World War II veteran. These aren't just old people. Super centenarians who have pushed the absolute boundaries of the human lifespan, and every day there are fewer of them. The Department of Veterans Affairs projects forward as well as tracks backward, and their trajectory for U.S. veterans charts a sobering path. 29,000 to 35,000 will remain by 2026, about 7,000 by 2029, roughly 1,000 by 2034, and around 300 by 2036. The last survivors are expected in the early 2042s, with 2044 as the VA's final projected year, which puts us 20 years from now before the last American World War II veteran passes away. Historical precedent exists for this kind of projection and supports the timeline. World War I ended in 1918, and its last known veteran was Florence Green of Britain, who died in February 2012 at age 110, exactly 94 years after the armistice. World War II ended in 1945, and if it follows a similar pattern, with the last veteran dying around 2040 to 2045, that's a span of 95 to 100 years. Maybe slightly longer given advances in medical care, but not by much. What makes this particularly heartbreaking is how the annual decline has become precipitous rather than gradual. 119,000 veterans in 2023 dropped to 66,000 in 2024, representing a 45% reduction in a single year. And the 2024 to 2025 decline of approximately 31% confirms this acceleration shows no sign of slowing. We're not on a gentle slope anymore. The cliff is here, and this accelerating pattern of loss is exactly why 2024 and 2025 became such critical years for commemoration, because everyone involved in organizing these events understood a simple truth: this might be the last time. What many acknowledge as the final major commemorations with meaningful veteran participation took place during the cluster of 80th anniversaries in 2024 and 2025. Let me walk you through what happened at these events, because they were remarkable and heartbreaking in equal measure. Approximately 170 World War II veterans attended ceremonies across Normandy on the 6th of June 2024 for D-Day's 80th anniversary, with about 25 of them having actually landed on those beaches 80 years earlier. 14,000 guests packed the Normandy American Cemetery, including 25 world leaders like President Biden, President Macron, King Charles III, Queen Camilla, Prince William, and President Zelensky. Logistics alone reveal everything about the state of this generation. American Airlines chartered an entire flight, bringing nearly 70 veterans from Dallas, while Delta Airlines partnered with the Best Defense Foundation to transport 48 veterans, accompanied by doctors and nurses, because these weren't just trips but medical operations. Wheelchair runs were timed to minimize standing. Ceremony schedules were designed around centenarian stamina, and event planners calculated bathroom access and rest periods with military precision. President Macron personally awarded 13 veterans the Legion of Honor, France's highest decoration, and President Biden gave a speech that connected past and present in a way that captured the moment's weight. The dark forces that these heroes fought against 80 years ago never fade, he said. Aggression and greed, the desire to dominate and control, to change borders by force, these are perennial. But here's the moment that really cuts through everything else. Harold Terens, 100 years old, married 96-year-old Jeanne Swerlin near Utah Beach on June 8, 2 days after the main ceremony, and their combined age approached 200 years. An invitation to the Élysée Palace state dinner that evening gave Terens a chance to offer a toast that went like this: to everybody's good health, and to peace in the world and the preservation of democracy. What he said next speaks to why he'd traveled all that way at 100 years old. I came here to invite all those soldiers buried on Omaha Beach, 9,836 of them, to my wedding. I'd like them to attend in spirit. 9,836 Americans are buried at the Normandy American Cemetery, and they never made it home, never got old, never got to marry at 100 years old and toast to peace. Harold Terens knows their names are carved in stone, while his gets to be written in a marriage certificate. Britain hosted a 4-day commemoration for VE Day's 80th anniversary from May 5th through 8th, 2025, featuring a 1,300-person military procession, a 23-aircraft flypast, and a Buckingham Palace tea party for approximately 50 veterans, hosted by King Charles III. Donald Rose, at 110 years old, attended the National Memorial Arboretum event, making him Britain's oldest surviving veteran in attendance. D-Day veteran Jim Miller, aged 100, captured what everyone was feeling when he said this: V-Day 80 years ago was a moment in history that shaped the rest of our lives. I hope we can summon the spirit of that day again this anniversary, to remember those who gave so much and to remind us of the values we care about. VJ Day's 80th anniversary came on the 15th of August 2025, when the National Memorial Arboretum ceremony included over 30 VJ Day veterans, with King Charles and Queen Camilla attending. A national 2-minute silence was observed at noon, accompanied by red arrows and Battle of Britain Memorial Flight flypasts. King Charles's message emphasized legacy in a way that acknowledged what was ending. In recalling so much suffering, we must not lose sight of how great was the cause and how sweet the victory. For those heroes of V.J. Day gave us more than freedom, they left us the example of how it can and must be protected. And here's what no one wanted to say out loud, but everyone understood. This was it, the last time there would be enough veterans to fill a ceremony hall, the last time organizers could plan around dozens or hundreds of participants. The 90th anniversaries in 2034 and 2035 will proceed with only about 1,000 American veterans alive, according to VA projections, most too frail to travel. By the 100th anniversaries in 2044 and 2045, the projection is 0. These weren't just commemorations. Farewells happened on those beaches. Let me tell you about some of the people we lost in 2024 and 2025, because each death represents not just a person, but a closing chapter of history that can never be reopened. Lou Conter died the 1st of April 2024, at age 102, as the last surviving crew member of the USS Arizona from the Pearl Harbor attack. 1,512 crew members were aboard the Arizona on the 7th of December, 1941, and 1,177 perished that day, which means Conter was among the 335 survivors. A quartermaster aboard the ship, he later became a naval aviator and earned the Distinguished Flying Cross. What he said about being called a hero matters here. They call a lot of us heroes, and I've always said we are not the heroes. Heroes are the ones right there that day that lost their lives. They gave everything up. We got back to the States. We got married. We had kids and grandkids. We are still here. They were lost forever right then and there. Lou Conter understood something that cuts to the bone: survival itself was a gift, not a virtue. His death means no one alive was aboard the Arizona when it went down. John Tinniswood of the UK died in November 2024 as the world's oldest man at death, 112 years old, after serving in the Royal Army Pay Corps. He wasn't just a World War II veteran, but the oldest verified male human being on Earth. And now he's gone. May 2024 took Colonel Bud Anderson, a World War II triple ace and P-51 Mustang pilot, while January 2025 claimed David Hamilton at age 102, the last D-Day C-47 Pathfinder pilot. John Lucky Luckadoo died in 2025 as the last surviving pilot of the Bloody Hundredth Bomber Group. Warren Red Upton died in 2024 as the last surviving crew member of the USS Utah from Pearl Harbor. Gilbert Chalk Charleston died in November 2024 at age 101, the last member of the 739th Tank Battalion and a Choctaw Nation veteran. Each of these deaths represents a finality that can't be undone. Last survivor of this ship, last pilot of that mission, last witness to this battle, and these lasts are accumulating faster and faster. Some remarkable people are still holding on. Dean Diz Laird is the last American World War II flying ace still alive. As of August 2025, John Cruikshank of Scotland is the last surviving World War II Victoria Cross recipient globally, and Ervin Hojda of the Czech Republic was born in 1918, making him 106 years old, and the last person who personally knew Josef Gebčík and Jan Kubiš, the men who assassinated Reinhard Heydrich. These aren't just old veterans, living connections to specific moments in history, and when they die, those connections are severed permanently. Understanding what we're losing requires grasping the full scale of what World War II mobilized in the first place, and the numbers dwarf anything in human history. Approximately 35 million people wore Soviet uniforms during the war. The United States put 16.4 million in service. Germany mobilized 13 million. The British Empire called up 11 million. Japan fielded 6 million. China deployed 5 to 6 million. And Italy sent 4 million. 70 to 85 million people served in uniform globally during the war, representing approximately 3% of the entire 1,940 world population either dead or in service. Catastrophic doesn't begin to describe the death toll. Military and civilian deaths combined reach 70 to 85 million, and the Soviet Union suffered most catastrophically, with 8.7 to 10.7 million military deaths and 24 to 27 million total deaths. Germany lost over 5 million military personnel, China lost 3 to 4 million military, and Japan lost 2.1 to 2.3 million. 416,800 service members was the American toll, protected by oceanic geography that produced a 97.5% military survival rate that was extraordinary compared to other major combatants. Global military survival averaged approximately 70 to 75%. But here's what time has accomplished that war could not. More than 15 million Americans made it home from the war with that high U.S. survival rate, and today we're down to 45,000. The war took about 3%. Time has taken 99.7%. Look at the curve from 1,945 to today and watch an exponential decay pattern unfold, approximately 16 million U.S. veterans in 1945, 5.7 million in 2000, 2.3 million in 2010, 496,000 in 2018, and 45,418 in 2025. That remaining fraction continues to halve every 18 to 24 months. By 2027, we might be down to 20,000 or fewer. By 2030, the projection drops to 7,000. By 2035, maybe a few hundred. And then zero. You might wonder why we don't have an exact count with all our technology and record keeping, why the figure remains approximately 45,000, or between 300,000 and 500,000 globally instead of a precise number. Several reasons explain this, and they're revealing in themselves about the challenges of tracking a disappearing generation. Definitional inconsistencies create the first problem. December 1941 through December 1946 is how the United States defines World War II service, while European nations generally use September 1939 through September 1945. Some statistics include only combat veterans. Others encompass everyone who served during the war period, including those who never left their home country, and Russia's figures have historically conflated frontline soldiers with home front workers, with 1.8 million classified as veterans in 2017, but fewer than 200,000 actually serving in combat. Record-keeping gaps compound these issues in ways that can't be fixed. The 1973 fire at the National Personnel Record Center in St. Louis destroyed approximately 16 to 18 million military personnel files, just burned them, gone forever. Germany maintains no public veteran registry, France provides no current official figures, and many countries lack centralized databases entirely. Privacy and verification challenges add another layer of complexity. Plenty of veterans never registered with veteran organizations. Some who enlisted by lying about their ages have service records that misstate their actual birth years, which affects both age verification and longevity projections, and the practice of lying about age to enlist was very common. Sheer speed of attrition makes any count obsolete almost immediately. Over 100 veterans die daily across all nations. Monthly changes can exceed 3,000, and any published figure becomes outdated within days. The National World War II Museum explicitly cautions that the numbers are based on national survey data and reflect a projection rather than an actual count of surviving veterans. When you see a number, understand that it's an educated estimate based on statistical modeling rather than a precise census, which actually makes sense when you think about it because we can't even get an accurate count of living people in general, let alone a specific subset dying at exponential rates. But the trend is unmistakable, the direction is certain, and the endpoint is inevitable. What happens to their stories when they're gone becomes the most pressing question we face right now, and multiple institutions have been racing against time to record as much testimony as possible. Over 12,000 oral histories have been recorded by the National World War II Museum through its Jenny Craig Institute for the Study of War and Democracy. The Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress has been collecting personal accounts. Organizations like the Honor Flight Network transport veterans to Washington, D.C. Memorials, and the Best Defense Foundation organizes battlefield return trips. The National World War II Museum launched something called Voices from the Front in March 2024, an interactive AI exhibit that allows visitors to converse with digital representations of veterans, home front workers, and witnesses. You can ask questions and the AI responds based on recorded testimony, creating a fascinating and slightly eerie attempt to build a kind of immortality through technology. Stephen J. Watson, President and CEO of the National World War II Museum, articulated the institutional imperative this way. Preserving the stories of the men and women who served in World War II has been at the heart of our institution since its founding. We have the enormous responsibility to ensure that the memories and experiences of the war will not be lost as those who lived through it leave this world. That word responsibility carries weight. Once they're gone, there's no second chance, no follow-up questions, no clarifications, no ability to ask, "Wait, what did you mean by that?" Or, "Can you tell me more about what you were feeling in that moment?" Living memory is fundamentally different from recorded memory in ways that matter deeply. Talking to a World War II veteran gives you more than information. It gives you tone of voice, pauses, the way their eyes change when they remember something difficult, the difference between what they choose to say and what they choose not to say, and the emotional texture of experience rather than just the facts. All of that richness and complexity and humanity is about to be gone. Russia's Immortal Regiment maintains an online database at moypolk.ru, and the name itself reflects the desire to make memory permanent. But it's not really immortal, of course, just data, ones and zeros, digital photographs and scanned documents. The real immortals, the actual people who were there, are mortal. And they're dying. Let me be specific about what we're losing, because people sometimes miss the full scope of this. We're not just losing old men and women who happened to live through a war 80 years ago. The last human beings who remember what the world was like before the atomic age, before the United Nations, before the entire geopolitical order that has defined our lives was established, are disappearing. They remember when fascism wasn't a historical abstract, but the government in power. Genocide wasn't something you read about in textbooks, but something happening right now that you might or might not be able to stop. The outcome of the war was genuinely uncertain, and it was entirely possible that Germany would win, Japan would win, and the world would be carved up into totalitarian empires. They know what it feels like to be 18 years old and believe you're going to die, not hypothetically, not in the abstract, but actually believe, with good reason, based on casualty statistics, that you will be dead within a year. What it feels like to kill someone, to watch your friends die, to be terrified beyond anything you thought possible and keep functioning anyway? To come home and try to build a normal life when you've seen things that can never be made normal, they know all of this. And they know something else that gets to the heart of why their loss matters. They know what it feels like to be part of something larger than themselves, to genuinely believe, whether it was true or not, that you were fighting for civilization itself, for freedom, for the future, not for oil or geopolitics or corporate interests, but for something that felt in that moment absolutely worth dying for. You can read about all of this, watch documentaries, visit museums. But when the last veteran dies, you lose the ability to ask questions like, was it really like that? What aren't the history books telling us? What did it actually feel like? Harold Terens, that 100-year-old groom at Normandy, said something that speaks to this when he invited the 9,836 dead to his wedding in spirit. He understood that he's a temporary custodian of their memory, that his job, as long as he's alive, is to remember them and speak for them. But when he dies, when they all die, who speaks for the 9,836 then? Who speaks for the 1,177 on the Arizona? Who speaks for the tens of millions who never came home? The answer is, we do, with whatever fragments they've left us, with museums and monuments and oral histories and AI chatbots and whatever else we can scrape together. But it won't be the same. It can't be. The future looks like this, and there's no way to sugarcoat it. D-Day, VE Day, and VJ Day will have their 90th anniversaries in 2034 and 2035. When the VA projects approximately 1,000 American veterans will still be alive. Most will be between 106 and 113 years old. Most will be too frail to travel, and there won't be hundreds of veterans at ceremonies, maybe a handful, maybe none. The 95th anniversaries in 2039 and 2040 might see a few dozen veterans globally, maybe. 0 living veterans is the projection for the 100th anniversaries in 2044 and 2045, none. World War II will be something that happened before anyone alive was born for the rest of human history after that point. The same status as World War I, the Civil War, the Napoleonic Wars, just history, not living memory. Children being born today will grow up in a world where meeting a World War II veteran is impossible, not unlikely, not rare, but impossible the way it's currently impossible to meet a Civil War veteran or a Victorian-era person or a witness to the French Revolution. Black and white footage, old photographs, museum exhibits, the incomprehensibly distant past, that's how they'll think about the entire war, the same way we think about the trenches of World War I or the battlefields of Gettysburg. But right now, in late 2025, about 45,000 Americans were there. They landed on those beaches, flew those missions, fought in those battles, saw the camps, dropped the bombs, liberated the prisoners, raised the flags. Late 90s and beyond, that's how old they are. Nursing homes and assisted living facilities hold most of them. Some still live independently. A few still drive, and some still give talks at schools when their health permits. And every single day, more than 100 of them die. The World War II veteran population has entered its final decade of existence, and the current figures will have multiple times before 2030. Approximately 45,000 to 66,000 Americans and 300,000 to 500,000 globally will become fewer than 8,000 U.S. veterans by decade's end, according to projections. Sometime in the early to mid-2042, approximately 95 to 100 years after the war's end, the last World War II veteran will die if the World War I precedent holds true. 20 years from now? Maybe less. The 80th anniversaries of 2024 and 2025 functioned as farewell ceremonies, and everyone involved knew it, even if they didn't always say it out loud. Chartered flights with medical teams, wheelchair runs, ceremonies designed around centenarian stamina, all of it was recognition that this was the last time, the last gathering, the last chance to say thank you in person. Commemorations will proceed without any living participants within a decade. Ceremonies will continue, of course they will, but younger generations will perform them, for younger generations about people who are no longer there to correct the record or add nuance or say, well, actually, it wasn't quite like that. What remains after the last veteran dies looks like this. 9,388 Americans buried at Normandy American Cemetery. 22,442 names on the British Normandy Memorial. Millions of names on memorials around the world. Millions of pages of testimony recorded by the Veterans History Project and the National World War II Museum and countless other organizations. AI exhibits where you can ask questions of digital ghosts. Museums and monuments and preserved battlefields and carefully maintained cemeteries. And the institutional commitment, the responsibility that Stephen Watson talked about, to ensure that the memories and experiences of the war will not be lost. But here's the truth, and it needs to be said plainly. They will be lost, not completely, not entirely, but partially, inevitably, irretrievably, because living memory is different from recorded memory, because human presence is different from historical documentation, because talking to someone who was there is fundamentally different from reading about someone who was there. We're in the last moments of being able to have those conversations. Last moments when you can shake the hand of someone who shook the hand of history. Last moments when World War II is something that happened to people who are still alive rather than just something that happened. The last World War II veteran will die in 2044, give or take a year or two. Last person who was there, last witness, last living connection to the most consequential event of the 20th century. And then there will be only what they left behind. Monuments and museums, recorded voices and written testimonies, photographs and footage, and carefully preserved artifacts. And silence. The greatest generation, a term coined not by them but by those who came after, will have passed entirely into history, not the history they lived, but the history we write about them, not their memory, but our memory of them. Harold Terens understood this when he invited 9,836 dead soldiers to his wedding in spirit. He understood that he was living on borrowed time that they never got, that every day he's alive is a day they're still dead, that his responsibility is to remember them as long as he can, and then to pass that responsibility on to the rest of us. Soon, very soon, all of them will be dead soldiers. All of them will need to be remembered in spirit because there will be no other way to remember them. We have, maybe, 20 years, probably less, to listen, to record, to preserve, to ask questions, to say thank you, to understand that we're standing at the edge of a cliff watching the last witnesses walk into the dark. And when they're gone forever. These are the last living witnesses to World War II. Fewer than 100,000 of them remain, and they're disappearing at a rate of more than 100 per day. This is the final decade. This is the last chapter. This is the end of living memory. Pay attention while you still can.